Welcome back, DIYers. So you're looking at the worst carburetor that Fiat ever put on their Spider. It's the Weber 2832 ADHA. And I'm sure you're wondering, why in the world am I bothering tearing down the worst carburetor they ever did? Well, for one thing, it's not my car, and the customer really wanted to keep everything original. So we're going to rebuild this terrible carburetor. Now, I should probably give some context as to why they put these carburetors on these cars. It's specific only to the 1979 year. And really, it was a transition year for Fiat. It was the first year that they had their 2-liter engine in the Spider, but they had not yet moved over to fuel injection, which occurred in 1980. This carburetor and its paired intake, which the intake is god-awful, it's really worse than the carburetor, honestly, was put on the car specifically for emissions. And you know, these days it's often not even cost-effective to rebuild a carburetor like this, simply because there's Weber clones out there that are really dirt cheap. I mean, for the Fiat Spiders, I specifically like the 3236. And I've shown that on my channel before. You can go check that out. And you know, with the aftermarket clones, they do take a little bit more setup initially, because from the factory, they don't ship them set up for whatever vehicle you're putting them on at all. But once set up, I mean, I've never seen a performance problem with them at all. And you just can't beat the value. But in an instance where you have to reuse the same carburetor, like if you're in California and you have to comply with their draconian rules, or you're just trying to keep the car all original, then yeah, you have to go to the expense of rebuilding these guys. And of course, you know, not specific to Fiat, but there's other applications where the replacement carburetors just aren't available. So of course you have to rebuild those too. And fortunately, there's guys like me around who can still do these carb rebuilds. If you need me to rebuild a carburetor for you, head over to bookautoworks.com/contact and fill out the form. Let me know what you got, and I can let you know how I can help out. But like I was saying earlier, it's usually not cost effective if you can just get a carb from somewhere else. It's usually 2 or 3 hours of labor to rebuild the carb, clean it thoroughly and everything. And, you know, and then you have the parts costs on top of that. And speaking of parts, with this particular carburetor, everything is available. Although there's a standard rebuild kit for it, which really just includes the main gaskets and the needle valve, very basic things like that, which it shares with some other Weber carburetors. But there's a few of the diaphragms for this thing that are specific to this carburetor that are kind of hard to get and are really kind of disproportionately expensive, which is another good reason just to chuck this thing in the bin and go with an upgrade. But today we're not doing that. Today we're going to clean this thing out and rebuild it. And you can probably see me putting some of these smaller parts in little wire baskets, mesh baskets. And the reason why I'm doing that is, well, you're going to find out here in a few minutes. I do find disassembling carburetors really fun. It's like taking apart a puzzle. And this particular one is a little bit more complex than a lot of other Webers, which, you know, I guess increases the frustration level, but also increases the enjoyment of actually being able to take it apart and successfully put it back together too. And when I'm taking a carb apart, it's a good time to check all the levers and pivots and shafts and whatnot to make sure that they're in good mechanical condition. You want to make sure nothing's bent or worn out and wobbling inside its bushings or anything like that. So ultrasonic cleaners are really magic when it comes to cleaning carburetors. The ultrasonic waves just get down in all the little nooks and crannies and passageways and blasts out any dirt and crud that's in there. But you do have to be careful of what type of cleaning solution you put in your ultrasonic, because carburetors are made from an aluminum zinc alloy, and they're typically zinc plated as well. So if you use anything that's going to react to the zinc or the aluminum, it's gonna mess up the carburetor for sure. And I don't know if you can read the writing on the jug that's sitting there next to it, but that's Simple Green HD Pro, which is supposed to be aluminum safe, and I found it to be pretty well aluminum safe. You have to mix it to its specifications. It tells you the strength for what's aluminum safe and what isn't on the bottle. And I believe this ultrasonic cleaner is a 15 liter, if I'm remembering correctly. But the reason why I like it is because it has mechanical controls instead of the digital. And I don't know, call me old school. I kind of like the mechanical controls. I've reviewed this ultrasonic cleaner on my channel, so go check that out. And now you know what the little baskets are for. They keep all your small parts together to keep from falling down to the bottom of your ultrasonic cleaner. But the ultrasonic waves can pass right through them, clean all the little bits. After all the parts have taken a trip through the ultrasonic a couple of times, I like to rinse it off very thoroughly. Make sure none of that gunky cleaning solution is left on it. And then of course I gotta blow dry everything off really thoroughly. Now I apologize for this weird rolling band thing that's going on the video. Normally this light doesn't affect the video at all, but obviously it didn't like being used with the time lapse. If any of you video experts out there know how to fix this, let me know, just in case I encounter it again in the future. But, for right now, it just is what it is. So when I'm getting ready to put together the carburetor after cleaning it, I like to lay everything out and make sure I have all the parts I'm going to need. And I'll also reference some of the old parts. And of course, it's pretty much vital to have a exploded diagram of all the parts available. This carburetor in particular has lots of little levers and push rods and whatsits, and they all have to kind of go back in just the right order, or otherwise you won't be able to get the thing put together. I did have to go back and forth a couple times getting everything lined up just right, but in the end it all worked out. Eventually you get to a point where all the little puzzle pieces just start to fall together. As you're putting it together though, you need to make sure that everything is kind of referencing itself correctly. Like one of the things is the little clock spring inside the automatic choke. That's got to be turned just right in order to get the choke to work correctly, open at the correct temperature. All the controls for the vacuum secondary and the emissions BS, like that all has to be clocked just right too. It's a challenge, but kind of a good challenge. So anyway, that wraps it up for this video. And like I said earlier, if you have a carburetor that you need rebuilt, go ahead and drop me a line on my website. I'll help you figure out what's the best route to go about doing that. Well, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.